If you clicked on this video, you're probably aware that laning is pretty important in Deadlock. In the best cases, winning your lane can set you up for success by creating an advantage that you can hold on to until you eventually run the opponent's base down. And in the worst cases, well, the opposite happens and you get ran from start to finish because you lost one too many lanes.
I mean, I'm so far behind on farm as well, and the warden is super far behind.
Oh no. Oh no.
What?
I got spotted.
Oh, you're stuck in there?
Oh, Donnie, no, I'm gonna get the lash.
You just left it.
I don't want to get the. They're gonna give me the lash again.
The solution is, of course, to get better at laning. And in this video, we're going to look at how to do just that. Just a quick little disclaimer though. I'll say right off the bat that not every lane matchup is going to be winnable, despite what some YouTube titles or videos might have you believe. Some characters are just really strong against other characters, but then really weak against the rest of the cast. And some heroes just aren't that strong early on, but they scale better into the late game. So you might lose the lane, but still win the game. What we're going to do with this video though is just put the focus on universal laning fundamentals, regardless of the hero that you're playing, so that you can hopefully win your winning lanes harder and go do something else around the map faster, or simply lose the losing lane slower, so that you can give the rest of your team some time to maybe come help you out. Hopefully, of course.
Very nice try, guys. Very nice try.
Holy shit, that is... Oh my god.
That's all he knows to say. Like, he doesn't...
Very nice try, guys. Very close. Haze one more time killing you. Haze no unstoppable and 0 useful items. You can use one stun just, okay? One stun, Haze dead. Haze use ulti, Abrams use your second skill. Haze use ulti, Viscos use your ulti.
What's that weird noise that I keep hearing?
So we'll start off with the basics first, because I want this video to be just as useful to new players as it is to experienced players. We're just going to do a very quick rundown. We've got 4 lanes on the map, and on each of these 4 lanes, 4 friendly and enemy minions will spawn in every 30 seconds that will be fighting each other until one group eventually dies. The players in the game will be joining these fights, either starting out as a solo or a duo, and it will be their goal to kill the enemy minions, not only so that your minions will be able to push deeper into the opponent's side of the map, but also to get souls, which are Deadlock's main form of currency. Now, souls are mainly used to level up your hero and buy items at the shop, making you stronger throughout the game. And at the start of the game, each minion is worth 75 souls, meaning that a full wave is worth 300. This assumes, however, that the opponents don't steal any souls, because when you kill a minion, you won't just get the full amount, you'll get half of the amount, and then the other half you have to get by shooting the orb that pops out of their head. And the opponents can also shoot at these orbs and steal all of the souls within it. This is usually referred to as denying, and you can do the same with their orbs. They will show up as red after they kill one of your friendly troopers. And yeah, this is sort of how the game is played. If 2 players shoot an orb at the same time, the player trying to secure the orb will be granted the advantage. But far more often than not, the determining factor as to who actually gets the orb comes down to whoever is closer to the orb to begin with, because all the guns in this game have bullets with travel time. They're not hit scan, so standing further away just means that your bullets take a longer time to arrive. Additionally, using a melee to last hit the minions gives you the full amount of souls because it doesn't spawn an orb into the air, and so the opponent won't have the chance to deny it. It's about positioning in the lane, it's about killing as many minions as possible, and it's about making sure that your opponent isn't just denying every orb that you're supposed to get. At a very surface level, the goal is just to get more souls than your opponent, so that you can buy more items at the shop, and eventually grow strong enough to just kill everybody in the lobby. Now, as a beginner, all of this hopefully makes a lot of sense to you. But as an experienced player, you're probably sitting here and wondering whether you should click off this video or not, because you already know all of this and this doesn't actually tell you how to win the lanes. So yeah, now with the basics out of the way, now that everybody is sort of caught up on the laning, let's get to what really matters the most when it comes to winning these lanes. And really, what I think matters the most can be summed up with just one word, and that is pressure. Simply put, if you're able to put more pressure on your opponent during the laning phase than the opponent is able to put on you, you will, in almost every single case, force the opponent back further into their lane, which not only limits what they can do, but also opens up more gameplay opportunities for you. If you, for example, have your opponent pinned behind their guardian, maybe under their guardian or next to their shop, you can sit closer to all of the minions in the lane, likely get more orb denies because you're closer to their orbs, and as we just talked about, the bullets have travel time. You can melee the minions, which just denies them the opportunity to deny altogether, and you're generally going to have an easier time securing more souls. If you have them pinned under their guardian, you can also, for example, go for a quick rotation on your neighboring lane and try to get maybe a gank kill on the opponents there. At the very least, you can blow all your abilities into the opponents so that now they are low health, and they will either have to buy a healing right or go back to base, giving your teammates a huge advantage. Also, if you've got your opponent pinned under their guardian, you can shoot them as they're trying to last hit their minions. Because if they're in a position where they have to hide behind their guardians, then that is because the minion wave is pushed in. They have to get rid of the minion wave, and while they're trying to do that, it's free shots for you at them. And if they don't respect you enough, you can even try to go for a kill, which is a bit more risky, but it's just yet another option that you have when you have more lane pressure. All of these things you're not able to do if the roles were to be reversed and if you're the one under your guardian. You can't really go for kills because it means that you'll miss so many last hits on your minions, and it just means that even if you get the kill, you'll end up being very poor. This is why players often say don't go for kills but focus on the soak, which I don't really agree with because kills are still important, but you can't really go for kills if the enemy minions are still alive. If you're under your guardian, you also cannot rotate over to a different lane and potentially help out your teammates. And also, if you're forced to sit far back under your guardian, you're also not going to get as many denies or orb confirms because it's likely your opponents will be closer to the minions. For all of these reasons and a whole bunch more, like confirming the soul crates, like confirming the gold vases with extra bonuses, because of all of those things, I think that lane pressure is the single biggest thing that determines who will win the lane and who doesn't. But lane pressure is a bit of a vague term, right? And you might think it just comes down to who's playing the lane better, which is partly true. But with this video, I really wanted to break down what it means to have lane pressure, how you can create it, and how you can deal with it yourself, even in unfavorable matchups. So lane pressure, what is it? How do you generate it? How do you deal with it? Generally speaking, there are three main factors that we have to look at that weigh in at how much pressure anyone has in a single lane. The first one of those is lane shove, which just means how effective somebody is at clearing the minion wave. Pocket, for example, has an extremely strong lane shove because the hero has 3 abilities that deal damage in an area of effect. These abilities can be used to damage players, but also to damage the minions, which means that if a Pocket would be playing against a Haze, for example, a character that mostly relies on gun damage to kill anything, Pocket should be able to kill the minions faster, thus shove the lane harder, which is going to cause the Haze to back under the Guardian. And she has to walk back under the Guardian because as soon as all the friendly minions are dead, the enemy minions will start attacking the Haze. And those minions, they actually deal quite a lot of damage. So you can't just really tank it yourself without dying. The only option will be to back off and let the Guardian tank the damage. In this case, the Pocket would have more lane pressure. A strong lane shove usually also means that you can kill the opposing healer minion faster, which is this special minion that drops down with every wave and heals everybody in its range for 40 health every 6 seconds, in the current patch at least. And this includes players, minions, and even the Guardians. Being able to kill this healer minion fast obviously means you're going to take away a lot of sustain from your opponent, simply because they're not going to get all that healing now. And that is yet another way to create more pressure just off of having a strong lane shove. A couple of examples of heroes with a good lane shove are Seven with his power surge that damages multiple minions at the same time. Or another example would be Lady Geist with her grenade that can just half hit all of the enemy minions at the start of every wave. The second way that we can generate lane pressure is through poke damage. Of course, not every character is going to have a lot of area of effect abilities, and not every character is going to have a lot of gun damage right off the bat. Not every character is going to have a very strong lane shove, but a lot of characters will still have ways to poke at the enemies with their abilities, which can allow them to keep the players with a stronger lane shove still a bit at a distance, because they'll be able to keep them low. Heroes with very strong poke are, for example, Vindicta, Viscus, Kelvin, Yamato, or Grey Talon. Currently, Deadlock has a lot of characters in this game that have very strong poke. And a lot of these characters can also apply this poke from a relatively safe distance. And yes, all of this poke damage generates pressure, but in a different way. Because what these heroes can do, they can still focus the minions first, that is very important, but then every time that the opponent is trying to walk up and use their superior wave shove to get an advantage, The heroes with poke are able to punish the opponents for it, because they'll be able to chunk their health down and keep them far away from the Guardian. This means that even if you don't clear the minion wave first, you're still not necessarily losing the lane, because the opponents aren't really able to do anything with their superior lane shove. The third and final way to generate lane pressure is through something that we call zoning. The character that you're playing might not have a great way to shove the lane, or they might not even have a lot of poke. But some characters do have abilities that can punish players extremely hard for simply having bad positioning. I'm talking about characters like Abrams, Lash, Dynamo, or even Bebop. Essentially, the strength of these characters doesn't come from minion or player damage. Their strength simply comes from preventing other players from applying their player or minion damage in an ideal way, which, depending on the skill levels of both players, is then supposed to even out the odds. Abrams is a very good example. It's a hero with 0 ranged abilities, everything is pretty much in melee range. It's a hero that has a gun that does no damage from range, and it's also a hero that's not particularly good at killing minions fast. So the hero doesn't have a lot of poke, the hero doesn't have a lot of lane shove. The only thing he is exceptionally good at is making sure that you don't just get to walk into the lane for free either. And that means that you're also going to have to play a bit slower, and if you don't respect that, then you get punished for it. The same goes for Bebop in a slightly different way. Playing optimally and going as fast as you usually would probably means that you're going to be an easy hook target. So to play around Bebop, you have to play a bit in a different way, at least until you're good enough to bait the hook out before you do anything else. Your lane shove, your poke damage, and your zoning capabilities together make up the amount of pressure that you're able to apply in a lane. And of course, all 3 of these are affected by player skill to a very large degree. If you miss all of your arrows on Grey Talon, well, you're not going to have any poke on a poke hero. If you have very bad positioning on Abrams, you will not be able to stun the opponents when they overstep. And if your aim is just bad in general, you're going to have an even harder time doing all 3 of these. So there is definitely a large amount of individual player skill attached to these. But understanding wave shove, understanding poke damage, and understanding zoning is going to make you a better player right off the bat, because it gives you somewhat of a game plan, and then it just comes down to decision making and execution. Now, I said at the start of the video that not every lane was going to be winnable, and that is because sometimes you just have a matchup where your character's strengths just don't really apply to the weaknesses of the opponent. For example, again on Abrams, you can zone in the lane all you want, but you're not really going to hurt a Vindicta too much with that, because she'll just be flying above you and stake you to the ground every time that you try to step up. And you can poke at an Abrams all you want from a distance, but he's likely going to heal that back up if you can't also go in and confirm the kill yourself. It kind of goes 2 ways in some matchups. There's also this thing where some characters are just better in the solo lane and others just work better in the duo lanes. Characters that are able to combat each other's weaknesses often go very well together. I'll give another example of what I've been doing recently. I just made the Abrams guide, so I've been playing a lot of Abrams recently. And as I just mentioned, Abram lacks a lot of wave shove and poke damage. So when I'm playing together with my wife, she decided she wanted to try out Viscous for a bit. Viscous has a lot of poke damage. And this way, if we're playing together in the duo lane with Abrams and Viscous, we have the poke, we have the zoning, and then we try to itemize to try and have a better lane shove by taking monster rounds first, or for example high velocity mech first. This rounds up our duo lane. It gives us a matchup where we're kind of covering each other's weaknesses, and you might not be too surprised to learn that without proper draft and with lanes sort of being auto-assigned, laning with an Abrams and a Viscous together is going to be a free win on the lane in a lot of cases. One thing to also keep in mind during a game is that the amount of poke, shove, or zoning that you have, it's not static. At the start of the game, you of course start off with one of your abilities and you unlock more as the game goes on. You also upgrade those abilities and you buy items from the shop that might be specific to your build or playstyle. And all of these things, they influence the strengths and weaknesses of your character a lot. And this is something that you're going to have to learn as you play. Again, Abrams, for example, is extremely weak before getting 500 souls, since he typically doesn't have his stun yet before that time, and even if he does manage to get a stun, he typically won't be able to take any positive trades, because he doesn't have the most damage, and he doesn't have any regeneration without his passive. Which means, in addition to not having any lane shove or poke damage, he also doesn't have much of a zoning game. At around 1500 souls though, this changes quite dramatically, since this is when all of his abilities come online, and usually also when he has 3 items, one of which is usually melee lifesteal. And this means that he will definitely have his stun to punish bad positioning, but he will also not be able to get bullied out of the lane as easily, because the poke damage that he receives can be regenerated more easily. The same is very much true for poke characters. Wraith can feel like an absolute mess at level 1, not really able to do too much. But then as soon as you get a few items and you get a few upgrades on your cards, the poke damage of her just goes through the roof. Understanding these power spikes on different characters again just comes with time and experience. So the best way to get a good understanding of these is just to play a lot and play a lot of different characters with maybe some different builds. I for one remember getting absolutely smoked by Lashes in the lane before I understood how the character worked. Whereas now, it just feels like one of the more easier matchups, because all you really have to worry about is his stun, and his stun is often super telegraphed. The next thing that we should also take a quick look at are the items, and what you should buy when you're ahead or behind. I already touched on this to a degree in my item shop guide, but I just wanted to do another quick look at what you typically buy in the lane when you're winning, when you're losing, and even what to buy when you're up against a hero with specific strengths and weaknesses. So, repeating what I've said in past videos, I think that if you're winning the lane, the best thing you can do is focus on winning harder. And that usually means picking more items in the lane that allow you to play more aggressive and thus apply more pressure. Now, as to what those items are specifically, it can be a lot of different things. For characters that rely heavily on gun damage, this usually means just getting more weapon items. Hollow Point Ward, for example, is great if you're up against a hero that isn't really able to poke you down, since you'll likely stay above 60% HP, and that just means you're going to hit 22% harder. For characters that mostly rely on abilities, this could also be just spirit items like extra charge or extra burst. Again, think of Grey Talon with his charge shot. Getting an extra arrow in the lane can make a lot of difference and can make his poke damage a lot stronger. For heroes that rely a lot on their zoning potential, again I'll use Abrams as the example, this could be melee lifesteal, because more sustain simply allows you to stay deeper in the lane for a longer amount of time, and thus that allows you to apply more pressure in that way. And a lot of these offensive items that you buy, they often increase your overall damage output as well, which is typically great for increasing your lane shove potential. Now, if you're losing the lane, you don't necessarily have to go for defensive items. You could still just as easily force the offensive items and try to make a comeback. I often say that the best defense is a good offense, and if you know the power spikes of your character, if you're suddenly going to have twice the damage if you just wait it out a little bit longer, then by all means, build the offensive items, take the hit for now, and come back later. But if you find yourself in a lane where you just know that it isn't winnable because of the matchup, or maybe you just messed up really bad, then defensive items become the next best thing. This is where the concept of losing slower becomes really important. Even if you cannot win the lane, you can still prevent your opponent from outright running you down, and the best way you can do that is by making sure that you're not dying. This is where items like extra health, extra regen, extra stamina, or healing right become invaluable. All of these are items that you can buy in the lane for different use cases. Extra regen is great if you're getting poked down a lot by a poke hero, like Grey Talon for example. Extra health or extra stamina, both of those are great if you're getting caught by a zoning hero or if you're getting bursted down, because you're usually taking a big chunk of damage, but after that those heroes don't have a lot of sustained damage to follow it up. So if you have a lot more health, you likely won't be able to get bursted down. And extra stamina can just prevent you from getting caught in the first place. And of course, there's also healing right, which generally is a great item if you're getting outshoved, but maybe the opponent doesn't have the most immediate pressure on you, so you have some breathing room in between waves and whatnot. Healing right is also great if you're in the duo lane, because you can apply it on your partner if he's getting low, or if you want to heal up, you can let your partner take over on the minion kills for a little bit until you're back to full health. Now, knowing when to buy offensive items and when to buy defensive items, that is not always an easy choice to make. And it's also something that comes with experience, especially because once a match, or multiple times a match, but usually once during the laning phase, you can also boost back to the base on the zipline, which can instantly heal you back to full health without the need to buy any defensive items at all. And usually this means that you only miss a couple of minions. Additionally, if you really don't want to play defensively, you can also ask one of your teammates to swap lanes with you, if you know from the start that you won't be able to win it. I pretty much always swap lanes when someone in the game asks me to, even if I'm playing with my duo. And sometimes I even ask my teammates if they will be fine with their matchup if I know that their lane is going to be rough. Sometimes giving your teammates an easier start can pay off very heavily, even if that means you have to suffer a bit more yourself. And if you're losing the lane, you can also ask your teammate for ganks, because if you're losing, it usually means that they're sitting very deep into your lane. And just one quick, simple rotation for just a few seconds can make all the difference in the world. This is of course only possible if either of your neighboring lanes are winning the lane pressure game enough, so don't get too upset if they're not doing it. But again, in those type of situations, swapping lanes around can often be big difference makers. So yeah, that is pretty much the video on laning, how to get better at laning in general. I know there's a lot that we didn't cover, like specific matchups and all that stuff, but as I said, it's just fundamentals that is universally applicable to every character that you play. Thank you all so much for watching, and you'll see me very soon with my jungling guide.